Yep, my name is William Woodruff, and yes, the title of this talk is Improving PyPI with Two-Factor Authentication. Button go forward. Yeah, so I work for a small cybersecurity consultancy named Trail of Bits. We're about half remote, half based here in New York City. On a day-to-day basis, I actually do mostly program analysis research, but a significant subcomponent of the work I do at Trail of Bits is FOSS work, usually either funded by companies or funded by nonprofits. And so the work I'm gonna be talking about today was graciously funded by the OTF in furtherance of improving the security of PyPI.org and the code base that powers PyPI.org. I have three major things on the agenda for today. The very first thing is gonna be enabling two-factor on your PyPI accounts. And I will, that's just a lead. We'll go into a little bit further in a bit, but we'll do that. We're also gonna talk about the different kinds of two-factor authentication and how and when you should be using and implementing them. And then finally, we'll talk about how awesome PyPI's code base is. So, yeah, before I do any of that, I wanted to give some thank yous. I've worked for the last 6 months on a code base that, when I started on it, I knew literally nothing about. I am not originally a Python programmer. I'm actually a Ruby programmer originally. So it was sort of an adventure for me. And there were 5 people in particular who were, well, for one, they worked with me on the contract, but they also went above and beyond to make sure that I understood what was going on and were always available for me during the development process. And 2 of them are in the audience right now, Sumana and Di. So please give them a hand because they were absolutely invaluable to me during the process. And also, this talk is specifically about PyPI's two-factor implementation, but the contract actually included an entire, a massive swath of improvements, including API tokens. So, if you want to talk to me after this about adding API tokens to your project, that's something we can talk about. We also added accessibility features, internationalization, and audit logging for security events. But since I buried it a little bit, newsflash, PyPI has two-factor authentication now. Most of you, okay, so can I get like a show of hands? Who has a PyPI account or a test PyPI account? Okay, so like probably half of the audience. If you have a PyPI account, there is no reason right now for you to not have two-factor authentication enabled. Every single one of you has at least one device in your possession that is capable of one of the two-factor methods that Warehouse supports. I'll talk about those methods, but you can see them on screen right there. We have two-factor with an authentication application, which is really just a TOTP app. We'll talk about what TOTP is, but I guarantee you have support for that on one of the things you own. And the other one is a security key, which is WebAuthn, and we'll also talk about that. But you can enable it right now. It takes maybe 25 seconds at the most with TOTP. So I will not be offended if you just open up your laptop or open up whatever device you have and just enable it. Please do. One of the reasons to do this is because currently Warehouse's numbers on two-factor authentication are not great. There are about 375,000 total users on Warehouse. Only 3,000 of them, as of about a week and a half ago, had TOTP enabled. TOTP is a very good form of two-factor authentication. It's not what I would say, I would not say it's the preferable form among the two, between the two. But so less than 1% had the less preferable version enabled. Less than 0.1% had the more preferable version enabled. So, for the vast majority of users, nothing's gotten worse, obviously, but they have not taken advantage of a substantial, an opportunity to substantially improve the security posture of their accounts. There is a silver lining to this, though, of course. Among extremely popular packages, specifically the top 100 packages by downloads in the last month, 12% of the top 100 packages have 100% coverage of two-factor among all of their maintainers. So each and every single maintainer on each of those projects has enabled some form of two-factor. And especially I wanted to give a shout out to the PyOpenSSL maintainers, because all 5 of them enabled it, within a few days of it being made available to them. So thank you. But again, I buried the lead a bit. I want to actually talk a little bit about what two-factor is, because this is something that a lot of people are not initially familiar with or might have sort of misapprehensions about. So before we talk about two-factor authentication, we have to actually talk about what authentication is as sort of an abstract component of security. Authentication is usually described in contrast with authorization. Authentication, at its simplest, is proving to a service or an entity that you are the thing that you say you are. This is sort of ontological, but I am a thing in the world. A service doesn't have any way to verify that I exist, so I have to give it some sort of token that proves, according to some proof system, that I am the thing that is in the world. The standard way to do this, or the paradigmatic way to do this, is with a password. So almost every service that each of you has a username and password combination. The proof is that only the thing in the world that knows that username and password can provide that username and password, and so that is the thing that is logging in. This is discrete from the actual authorization step, which is associating the thing with the set of rights that thing has on the service. So that's sort of that's not so important for this talk, but just to understand that authentication itself is really just a matter of proving identity within a system. And like I said, the standard way to do this is with a username and password combination, or maybe something like a social security number, or some other secret. This, if this sounds, let me put it this way. This is what's called a knowledge factor. This is something that an entity proves that it is what it says it is because it has unique knowledge of some fact about itself. This is just on first glance not true. I can learn someone else's password, and then for all intents and purposes, I am that person according to a knowledge-based authentication system. So this is not ideal because hackers will take advantage of, hello. Hackers took advantage of my slides, so.
You're on the first.
Oh, there we go, okay, yeah. Boop-a-doop. Go back. Yeah, hackers will take advantage of the fact that a knowledge factor can be obtained by another person to, log into someone else and do bad things. So we want to add a second factor. We want to add something that more rigorously proves the identity of some object. And this would be in contrast to a knowledge factor, this is called a possession factor. This is something that belongs intrinsically to either the thing that is being authenticated or the thing that is authenticating on behalf of the person. So this, famous examples of this, in the real world are a fingerprint scanner or an iris scanner, or some kind of voice. My voice is my password, right? More concretely or more rigorously, these are forms of second factors that we're going to be talking about today, and I'll go over 4 major ones. And also just because this space is laden with bad terminology, for the purpose of this talk, two-factor authentication is equal to multi-factor authentication. People use these things slightly differently in different contexts, but I don't care. I'll just use them the same. So you might be thinking why even would I want this? For my purposes, I have good passwords. I don't get attacked by hackers. I'm secure. I'm not a target for nation-state adversaries. Why would I care about two-factor? Well, there are 4 pretty good reasons that I can think of. So overarching all of this is that your security of your accounts is not contingent upon you. It's also contingent upon every component of the service that you're authenticating with. And newsflash, all of those services are insecure. Those services will leak your passwords. Other services that you reuse those passwords on will leak your passwords, and then you'll get credentials stuffed, and people will take over your accounts. People will just phish your parents for your passwords. This is something that this is something that happens. People give their parents passwords for electricity bills or something, and that password will be the same password they use for something else. Happens. Services will just leak their databases or will, provide some kind of oracle for passwords. Happens all the time. And also, your partner is going to try to log on to you as Twitter and log on as you on Twitter and creep your DMs. But they can't do that if they have a second factor because they aren't you. They don't have a physical token proving their identity. They only have the knowledge token. But of course, this isn't a cure-all. There are plenty of other attack vectors that are not mitigated by adding a possession factor for authentication. Typo squatting is a really common package index attack. It's, you name a package similarly enough to a common package, and then when your developer, who is doing some local testing, installs it, they do pip or gem install Flask with 1 off from K, Flask out like flowl or something. And oops, that's a malicious package. PyPI has protections for that, but many other package indices don't. Similarly, I could always just be a bad faith package maintainer and just sell my package to like the highest bidder, who will then install malware on your system. So not a cure-all, but it does prevent these sort of like really, really common attacks. So yeah, let's do a really quick tour of two-factor methods. There are 4 that I want to focus on today. There's the sort of like, the one that probably your bank uses, which is SMS and or voice two-factor. There's HTTP-based physical keys, which are like a mess. And then there's the 2 that I implemented for PyPI, which are TOTP and WebAuthn, which some people call U2F, and I'll also go over the terminological spaghetti for that. Yes, let's talk about SMS and voice. This is a little bit of a controversial take. This is one that I firmly believe, but I know there are people, including Tom Tacek, Idlewords, and one person in the audience who will be directly conflicting what I'm saying right now. So you should defer to them in many cases. I firmly believe that you should not be adding SMS two-factor to new greenfield two-factor implementations. The SMS proof system is that a user owns a physical phone, which is associated with a phone number. When they receive a code, only that phone can receive that code. And so this is a physical token indicating that they are who they say they are. The problem with this is that none of this is actually true. Everything about the phone network is insecure. There are practical attacks that a non-state or non-advanced adversary can perform on the cellular network to steal SMS and voice tokens. These are things that have been done to people in my company. That being said, I do want to preface that with, for the average user and a service that already has two-factor enabled, or already has some form of two-factor and SMS is the only option, you should be enabling SMS. It is strictly better than no two-factor at all. This is only, the case where you are a developer, you're building a two-factor system, and your choices are between these 4 options. The 2 you should be going with are TOTP and WebAuthn, in my opinion. Let's also talk about HTTP-like tokens. I call these HTTP-like because they're almost all proprietary and nobody knows what the hell they do internally. Like some of them do something like HTTP, some of them are literally just like a counter with like some HMAC on top of it, which is kind of like HTTP, but not really. Nobody really knows what the security properties of these things are. These 2 GIFs are 2 different coworkers of mine destroying security tokens, by the way. So we get angry at these things pretty frequently. Similar proof system, the user possesses this physical token, which is registered with them upon account creation. Like their first day at the office, they're handed this token and told, like, keep this on you at all times, don't give it to anybody else. The codes that it gives you are your second factors. Presumably, only that user's token can generate those codes. These companies tend to be the same ones that make smart cards, and if you know anything about smart cards, there is a long history of smart cards having like really hilarious and horrific cryptographic vulnerabilities in them. So, probably better than SMS voice, probably, newest gen one's probably fine, but I don't know why you would ever choose this. It costs more money. You have to buy a special device. You have to buy a server application that you run somewhere. And I'll be talking about 2 alternatives that require literally none of that. So, just don't. So things that you should just do are TOTP and WebAuthn. And you should be interpreting TOTP as your baseline two-factor system. TOTP is short for time-based one-time passwords. You can think of TOTP as sort of a refinement over HTTP, which I alluded to before. HTTP is HMAC-based one-time passwords, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Both of them are RFC standardized. Both of them are actually extremely simple. You can read both specs and understand them within a day without any real specialized cryptography knowledge. All you have to really understand is that there's a sort of asymmetric secret, or a symmetric secret that is shared between client and server generates it. And then on every authentication action, both the client and server generate a code from that secret that is boxed against the current timestamp, Unix timestamp. And if the 2 match, good. User has proved that they have physical possession of that secret, which is usually stored on a phone app, or maybe it's stored in like a password manager or some other physical device that the user uniquely possesses. And there are some like conceptual weaknesses with this because a secret, a user could just duplicate that secret across n devices, and all of a sudden there's physical possession across n devices. So conceptually, TOTP is not as unique of a two-factor scheme as WebAuthn, which I'll talk about in a bit, but it's really good for the average user, and it's way better than SMS, and pretty much everybody in this office probably has a smartphone, but even if you don't have a smartphone, if you just have a dumb phone or a feature phone, every device out there in the world right now should be able to do HMAC and SHA-1. There's a good chance that your dumb phone or feature phone has a Java app that can do TOTP. This is something that corporate clients want all the time, so there usually is an app for dumb and feature phones. So this is something that really is a baseline, in my opinion, usually. Yeah, so from 1,000 feet, TOTP sort of looks like this. With all of these schemes, there's a provisioning step and then an actual authentication step. On the provisioning side, the server talks to Alice and says, hey, I just generated a secret. Here you go. Take my secret. Here are some provisioning options you should use with it, this is your username and this is the service that you're identifying with. You should save that on your side. Alice says, cool. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to generate a TOTP code from that secret. I'm going to ship it back to you, and you're going to generate a TOTP code with the secret that you sent me. And if the two match, then the server's like, cool, you provisioned correctly. In the future, we will treat this as your second factor. And then actual authentication mirrors that almost identically. It's just missing that initial provisioning step. So the server retrieves its secret, generates a code. It sends over, the client pulls its secret from memory, generates the code, sends it over to the server pulls its secret from memory, generates code, matches the two, and if they match, lets the user in. And because TOTP is, the RFC isn't old, but it sort of is flexible, and people have sort of taken liberties over the years with TOTP implementations. There's sort of a few normative things that you should do and shouldn't do as a matter of practice supporting common TOTP applications. One of the things that you should do, just as a matter of keeping users from locking themselves out, is you should require users to enter a TOTP code upon enrollment. There are services out there, I'm not going to name names, but there are some that just allow you to scan a QR code and then cool, you authenticate, you're done. What happens is users will scan that QR code with another app, and then they've just locked themselves out of their account. So that happens shockingly often. You should also provide both a provisioning URI and a QR code. Many users just don't have access to a QR scanning app, but they can enter a short base32 string that is functionally equivalent to the secret that is stored in the provisioning, in the QR code. Similarly, there is a sort of de facto standard, I think it might be published by Google, for building TOTP URIs. That standard includes an issuer name and a username embedded with the code, embedded with the secret. You should include those, because if you don't, users will just have a big list, like we saw before. This list on the right, I've deleted the actual service names for my tokens just because whatever. But normally you would see, Google and then William at my email on the bottom. And similarly for most services. Without that username and issuer embedded in the provisioning URI, those would not appear, and users will not be able to distinguish between their tokens. So, you should do that. And shame upon TOTP applications that do not respect the issuer name. There are some of you. I know who you are. Similarly, so TOTP has a flexible specification. You can choose different hashing algorithms. You can choose different TOTP code lengths. Don't do this, because there are no TOTP applications out there that actually respect any of those parameter choices. They all use 6-digit codes with SHA-1, and that is perfectly fine for the purposes of two-factor authentication with TOTP. Just do that, just use 30-second windows plus or minus 2 for potential clock drift across clients and servers. Don't try to get clever with your parameter selection. And similarly, don't nag users on every single security action. Users get security fatigue really easily with two-factor. They tend to get frustrated and just start saving either recovery codes on their desktop and using those instead, or they save the QR code on their desktop and oh, I'll just keep it for later. Make their lives as pleasant as possible when doing two-factor, and especially TOTP, because it's kind of a hassle to go to your TOTP application and find the right one. I'm going to speed up a bit because I'm way behind. Let's talk about WebAuthn. WebAuthn is the new hotness, and it's what I love. Unfortunately, it's also full of spaghetti. People call WebAuthn U2F because there was previously a specification called U2F. There are these two client-to-authenticator protocol specifications called CTAP 1 and 2. You don't have to worry about any of that. There's also FIDO2, don't worry about that. Just call it all WebAuthn. Sometimes your users will call it U2F, sort of like a clean X term, that's fine. The difference between WebAuthn and TOTP is that TOTP is symmetric, WebAuthn is asymmetric. There's a public and private key. The server stores the public key sent to it from the client. The client uses its private key to generate attestations. It's hardware agnostic. Any service that speaks the protocol can act like a WebAuthn token. So that means Touch ID, Face ID, weird, other things. Anything that speaks the protocol can functionally act like a WebAuthn token. And it's a W3C standard, and almost every modern browser supports it, which is awesome, because that was not the case with U2F. From 1,000 feet, WebAuthn basically looks like TOTP with an additional step. The additional step is that the server sends over a set of key options and a session nonce. So unlike TOTP, WebAuthn sessions are additionally wrapped with a session nonce to prevent replay attacks. Probably isn't necessary in the context of TLS. Well, maybe, depending on like a man-in-the-browser attack. But it adds an additional level of replay security. The server sends over a set of supported session options. The client says, hey, my token, my security key supports this parameter selection, this key length, and this version of CTAP. It sends over its public key, stores its private key, and the client says, or the server says, okay, do some action to prove that you actually did store your stuff this time. And once you do that, you're provisioned. Authentication looks almost identical. The server sends over its assertion options. So, these are the set of keys I want you to assert with. The client says, hey, press the button on your device, use the associated private key to generate an attestation, send it over to the server validates it, and is like, cool, that looks right. Similarly, do's and don'ts. For WebAuthn, you should definitely allow anonymous attestation. This is an extension to the WebAuthn spec. Built-in or embedded WebAuthn implementers like Face ID and Touch ID use ECDAA, which is elliptic curve direct anonymous attestation, to generate their public and private keys. If you don't allow it, then users who have Touch ID can't use your service via that factor. And it doesn't hurt their security, so you should just do it. You should also support multiple WebAuthn keys per user. There is literally no reason not to do this. I don't know why, services like Twitter do this for some reason. They limit you to one key. I don't understand it. If someone is here from Twitter, can you explain that to me? And also force users to tag or label their keys in your database. Because users sometimes will have 2 or 3 keys that are all the same shape, they're all the same color. They should label them physically, and they should also label them on your site so they know which one they actually use to provision and to authenticate with you. Don't make users choose between TOTP and WebAuthn, support both, allow them to authenticate with both. This functionally allows TOTP to be sort of like a recovery factor when a user invariably loses their security key, which is easy to do. And don't use U2F.js or any other legacy pre-WebAuthn library. These things have poor browser support, maintenance levels are mixed, and there's just no reason to do it when WebAuthn works with every modern browser. So yeah, technical wrap up. No matter the size, you should probably be adding 2-factor to your sites and services. If you already have SMS 2-factor, you should be phasing it out. TOTP is really easy to add, and it's the baseline. All of your users' devices support it. WebAuthn is easy-ish to add, and it's really, really good. I love it. Please add it. And deaths to U2F.js. But let's talk about PyPI, because that's what this talk is actually supposed to be about. PyPI has two, so some quick history. PyPI had a legacy code base, which I know nothing about and is probably haunted. But the current code base began in roughly 2015. I only started interacting with it in like March, so I know also relatively little about it besides what I did. But I will say, very nice. 100% branch coverage in unit tests, sort of an idiomatic pyramid app, and it's really easy to deploy locally. So much love to the warehouse team because it was really a pleasure to work with as a client engineer, or a contract engineer. Adding it to PyPI was really, really simple. Here is just a high-level overview of the summary change set. You can go look at these PRs yourself, creep them, see what the implementations are like. The really cool thing about this is that these changes are mostly unit tests. So believe it or not, these implementations are really simple. 2/3 of the change set is like is 100% branch coverage for the changes introduced and for the database models. There were some fun bugs. There was two-factor bypass initially because users could reset their password, and then after password reset, were immediately logged in. So in theory, you could reset your own password and then bypass your two factors. We caught that in user testing. That never made it to deployment, or to production. The initial TOTP implementation allowed code reuse within the window. That's technically an RFC violation. It's really only a weakness in the case of man-in-the-browser attacks, but we also caught that and fixed it. Doesn't work anymore. And also, lots of fun bugs with WebAuthn, because WebAuthn is still a recent standard. Not all browsers require secure context for all WebAuthn URLs. That was a fun thing to debug because it was really hard to debug. And also, Fetch API, the Fetch API, which is unrelated to WebAuthn, I'm done. Yeah, it sucks. Learn from our mistakes, loved by children and parents alike. Thank you.